and being older and taller and, maybe stronger. I don't know, but then
Probably.
yeah, I would assume so. But that's through what I've read and what I've learned, that would most likely be the case. Is through those things, they were probably terrified to say no. Unfortunately for me, that does not make me look any better.
We are about to watch the parole hearing for a man who had 3 victims that he was caught. And this wasn't just like, hey, I'm dating them and I don't know their age. These 3 victims all had similar stories, how they were forced into these acts. They range from the age of 13, 14, and 15. Yet, according to him, maybe they were shorter and smaller and it didn't look good because he was stronger. And this is which is one of those wild Connecticut parole hearings where we get to see the number of mannerisms and face gestures, and just it would be really funny if it wasn't so serious. Now, let's just watch this parole hearing, and I'll unpack it with the details Sir Richard found at the end.
Sure. Aziah D DOC 411246.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Aziah D DOC 411246. He is serving a sentence of 20 years, execution suspended after 10 years, followed by 20 years of probation, for 3 counts of sexual assault, second, and a violation of probation with underlying youthful offense, risk of injury. As of today, records reflect a parole eligibility date of October 11, 2022 at 50%. There is victim input in this case. We also have present our Office of Victim Services Advocate, Ms. De Jesus. The inmate was heard by the board on October 26, 2022. He was denied parole and a new parole date was set for October 2024. The board recommended that the inmate completed a TIER program, Voices, and the Track 1 sex offender treatment program prior to having his next hearing. Since his last hearing, Mr. DeWan has not completed any additional OAP programs. He mentioned he has completed a couple of college courses and stated he has written to the programs and treatment and was told he was on the waiting list. The IPO reached out to the treatment supervisor, which was told that Mr. DeWan is possibly getting into programs prior to having his hearing in October. It appears he was placed in one of the Voices programs. However, we have no updated consultation if he started a program or not to date.
Sorry.
So just 1 second. So I don't have confirmation of the Voices program, but I have that Mr. DeWan completed the Tier 2 program in September 2024. There was a certificate in the file.
Yes.
Is that correct, Mr. DeWan?
Yes, I sent it to the IPO Chamroy.
Okay, sent to Mr. Shamrock. Okay. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system scores the offender overall score for recidivate and fall within the low range. Utilizing the static 99R, the offender's overall score for sexual offense recidivism fall within the moderate to high range for recidivism. Mr. DeWan, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin, sir.
Thank you. Throughout these years, I've sat and I've realized a lot of things. One of them is, though I admit my guilt, I did not maybe in the beginning believe so. And I also realized that I was not ready when I had my first hearing. I made that mistake of coming in here and acting like I was. I also realized the damage, the damage that I have put onto these young ladies. And unfortunately, as much as I wish I could, I cannot take that back. I don't go through a day where I wish that I could take it all back and stop the hurt that I'm sure they're going through. But unfortunately, I cannot. I can only focus on the future and hope that my actions that I've shown so far while in prison for rehabilitation and the actions I hope to prove to you, if given the chance, will prove that I am a changed man, and that I can be a good member of society, good law-abiding member of society. I have completed multiple programs, as you've seen, Tier 2, short-term sex program. I've done multiple voc eds throughout my years. I've completed automotive, auto body. I technically have completed electromechanical. I'm just still there as a unofficial tech. I've worked in prisons where they didn't have vocation. I've done prison of peace. I've done everything possible to stay out of trouble. And I just hope that, I've also looked outside of here because I was not able to get some of those programs that the board had requested of me. I had my family look up for me and reach out to see if they could find a program out there and get it set up in the hopes that I got released. My mother had gotten a hold of, on July 10th, my mother had gotten a hold of a woman named Eileen, the main branch of CATSO. I believe that is Meriden or Milford, one of those. And she was told that, unfortunately, she couldn't set anything up at the moment. I would have to wait till I left. However, there was someone that I was told that I could call. He is a private person by the name of Dan Gates out in Sharon. I did reach out. I had my mother give me the number. I did reach out through the counselor, and I tried to call him at a minimum of 3 times. Each time I did not get an answer, and I left a voicemail with the counselor's number in the hope that he would return my call so I could set something up. On the other hand, I also have called Demas for mental health treatment. And if they offer it still, a treatment in terms of alcohol, such as an AA meeting or another tier meeting, voices type of program, anything that they can offer, I'm willing to take. Again, they told me I'd have to be out and go there in person and sign the papers. I was there as part of Young Adult Services before, and so they said it shouldn't be much of an issue. But as I said, I'm willing to do everything and anything that I need to do. And I have a full support system behind me.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dwan. That was very good. We are going to be asked, you know, from the last hearing, we're going to be asking you some questions. At the end of our questioning, we will hear from the Office of Victim Services, and then we will deliberate and give you our answer.
All right.
All right. Ms. Chance is going to begin with the questions this morning.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So, hello, Mr. Dwan.
Good morning.
So, as you know, this is a rehear for you.
Yes.
And the previous panel asked you to do 3 things.
Yes.
Complete the TIER program, the Voices program,
Yep.
and a problem sexual behavior treatment program. Now, you've indicated that you completed the Tier 2, which we were able to verify. Can you tell me when you completed the short-term sex offender program?
Oh boy, it was before my last hearing. I couldn't tell you the exact date, unfortunately, but the person who had done it at the time, who ran the program, I don't know his first name. We always called him Mr. Gallagher.
Right. So what the panel asked you to do is to take the track 1.
Yes, and I had written.
Which is the long term.
Yeah.
And you are given 2 years in which to do that.
Correct.
So can you tell us why you haven't done that?
I had written, I was told they will call me when it's my time. I talked to my mental health worker, Ms. Kume, to try to see if she could speak to them, to let them know, listen, I only have a limited amount of time. I need to get this done. It's something that I need for myself as well as for the board. And I was told that she couldn't do anything to help me, but she said she would still try to ask. again, next time I was told that I wasn't allowed to go yet. So that being said, that is when I had my family reach out and look around to see what we could find.
Yeah, so the problem with that, Mr. Dewan, is you are there, you know what you are being asked to do, and you needed to ensure that that track one program you completed. And there was a reason why they wanted you to complete the track one, despite the fact that you had already completed the short term.
Correct.
Okay. And do you remember why they wanted you to do the full track one?
Because they said they did not see enough offender growth, and that they wanted me to understand more of, one, my crime, two, how it impacted the victims. And in as I had previously stated, it's not for my lack of trying. I have gone through just about every channel, and each channel I was shut down and told to wait. I tried to get everything done as possible, as quickly as possible. The minute I saw what I had to do, and I was just denied at every turn. I know some programs were shut down for a while due to there wasn't a person to run it. I do not know if that was one of them. I know Voices was one of those, but I don't know if that was one. But I was told that they would call me when my time came. And
so the other question is, Mr. Dewan, the Center for Treatment of Problem Sexual Behavior did an evaluation and recommend that when you're in the community, you can attend treatment there. But it's obvious from your opening statement that you have chosen not to go through the agency that did the evaluation for you. Can you tell us why?
can you explain that a little more for me, please? I don't understand
So you were given an evaluation on May 17th, 2022.
Okay, yeah, I know who that is, yeah.
Right. So if and when you go back in the community, then their recommendation is that you are appropriate to participate in the problem sexual behavior treatment in the community.
Okay.
But in your opening statement, you've indicated that you have consulted with a private treatment therapist.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not denying that I would take that. Any program that I can get that will help and better me, I will take. Doesn't matter what avenue I get it, whether it be private or not. The fact is, I need to do it. It needs to be done, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So I'm not saying I will not go with these people. I'm not saying I'm going private either. I'm just saying that these were the options that I was aware of that were given to me. So that is my understanding. So I apologize if I had, stated that incorrectly and gave you that impression.
I was just going by what you said in your opening statement.
But
anyway, so as you have stated, the panel has indicated that they didn't see any change in terms of the short-term sex offender. You were not able to say why you committed the offense, what the problem was, and how you're going to address it going forward. Right. And you still haven't addressed that. So how have you changed without the program? What have you done to assist with that change?
So what I have done is I have sat down, contemplated on my own, and I've also asked my mental health worker for various I wouldn't say booklets of information, but I'd say stuff on impact, I guess would be the way to say it, and my family as well. Stuff on impact, how this kind of offense impacts, you know, the victims. And I got to sit and read that. And it helped me not only reflect, but it also helped me sit and realize just how serious and how bad this, like how serious not only the offenses, which by the way, as I said, I'm guilty. I make no excuses for it. Never will. But it also shows me how bad it affected them. And again, as I stated, wish I could take it back. And I can't. So the only thing I can do moving forward is to show you, the community, everybody, that I am not the man that I used to be, by making a brighter future for myself and staying out of trouble. And I continue to learn on how these types of things affect these girls. I still have people giving me more and more information each day. I talk to my mental health worker. I have a group, a PTSD and substance abuse group that I go to. I sit and talk with that mental health worker, you know, and we sit down and we break that down. We get to talk and I get a better understanding, you know, and it's helped me become a better man with a better understanding of just how bad it is. So, again, I make no excuses for it, but I'm hoping that my actions so far and, you know, what I'm trying to accomplish through college, which I also plan to continue if I'm given the chance to leave. Even here, I'll continue it. Doesn't matter. I plan to do a bunch of things, but that future is my way of proving that I can be a law-abiding citizen and stay out of trouble and never commit my offense again.
So you said that you've contemplated on your own and you referred to the impact of your behavior on the victims.
Yes.
But do you know why you did it? Have you figured out what was going on with you?
Oh, yes. Yes. See, my problem was I was going through I want to say a depression, more along the lines of my own trauma at the time. And I had just broken up with my girlfriend and I went out. I knew these people. I went out and I asked them, I talked to them, and we ended up having a sexual relationship. Now, that being said, I am aware now of how old they were and that they were not of the age. Again, I make no excuse, and I know that they couldn't have given me that consent then. And again, I apologize for it, and I wish I could take it back. But my own demons, we'll say, is what led me down that road. And I have since addressed said demons by talking to mental health, by going to these programs, things that I never did. I would go to mental health, but I'd sit there for 5 minutes because I didn't feel comfortable talking to them. Since I started talking to them, my mind has cleared. The weight and stress that I felt back then is gone. I've been able to think about things, specifically this, and it's led me to where I am now. So I have addressed that through mental health help and self-studying. So yes, that's what I have for you on that.
So two things.
Okay.
Do you know why you haven't been able to maintain employment?
In here or at home?
No. Back in the community.
When I was home, I had a steady job the entire time I was out. In
And
2017.
how long was that?
I was only out for about 6 months or so, and I believe that it was less than a month after I got out, I had a job. I worked for the Shell gas station at the bottom of East Main Street in Torrington.
Yeah, you worked for them for 2 months.
It was 2 months.
Yep,
Oh, I felt it was longer than that.
no,
Time passed, but I did work for them for a little while. I did some odds and ends jobs, working with construction with my grandfather and a few other things, but that was my on the books job, yes.
so that was 2 months. Now, the other concern I have is, how long ago did you break off that relationship with your girlfriend?
Let me ask for clarification on that. Before I committed the offense, or
Yes,
Just in general.
because before you committed the current one, because you were saying that you were going through, a depression because you and your girlfriend broke up.
yes. So I went through that, I want to say less than a day before. When I'm a very emotional person. So when stuff hits me, at the time at least, I tended to hold it. I tended to keep it in. I tended to not hold a grudge or anything, but I tended to just sit there and wallow in self-pity, I guess you would call it. And
So what would
unfortunately,
you do now going forward?
I would go and I would consult my mental health worker. I would talk to my family and friends. Whatever, I would talk to somebody about what's going on and what I can do to meditate and let that go.
Okay, so what do you think it's going to take for you to have a good relationship with someone else?
I think, one, it needs to be truthful, and two, I need to take my time.
Wait a minute, needs to be truthful on whose part?
On both. Mine mostly, because again, as I said, I hid a lot of things because I, didn't like to share a lot about myself. And that was a problem in a lot of my relationships. And I figured that out again during my meditating, self-sitting. And unfortunately, that was my problem. My plan now is to come out and speak to them and be like, listen, this is how I am. This is what I know. If you accept me, I would like to take you out and actually go out on a date, so on and so forth, if that's the type of relationships you're talking about. If we're just talking normal friendships, I still want to hang out. I still want to, talk and whatnot. But as far as relationships go, I definitely want to take my time. And that's something I did not do when I was home. I wasn't as truthful with myself to them and my own self as I am now. And I think,
Okay.
and I believe that's something they need to know.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, so as I stated to you, my two concerns are your lack of not able to stay in an employment for a good period of time.
I can
Because
address
when I looked at your history, you were doing 2 months, I think maybe 4 months was the longest. So
Yeah.
that is one concern. And intimate relationships, which you've just indicated how you're going to address that. There is still some concern in terms of wishing you had completed the Track 1 sex offender program.
I understand.
And I know that you do have family support in the community. Just getting back to the employment piece of it, I know your grandfather owns his own business, so that's a easy path for you because perhaps, you can go and come as you please. So any employment that you get would have to be paid employment, and you need to work on staying there, a lengthy period of time, because that's how you're going to demonstrate that you have changed and you're this new man that you've talked about.
Correct. May I speak on the employment for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, so on top of my grandfather, I have other options available to me as well. Since recent, my mother reached out to a friend of ours who also works with my grandfather and has offered me employment making $20 an hour doing the same thing as my grandfather in between that. Like, so when my grandfather doesn't have a job, he has another one for me. He always has work. And on top of that, I have a friend named Jaden who works for a flagging company, you know, the construction flagging in the road.
You want to be a flagger, right?
Right. She offered that position to me. And she said, once I get you your OSHA 10 and your OSHA 30, you're good. Now, I forgot to mention this. The state of Connecticut, DOC, paid for me to get my OSHA 10 in electromechanical. I'm waiting for it to get here. I passed. Everybody in the class passed. I'm just waiting for it to get here. So that's one step away. Now I just need to complete OSHA 30, and that job is as good as mine. And that's $25 to $35 an hour starting full time. But I have various means of employment in the meantime.
Yeah, it's also being able to maintain that employment
I
over a
promise
period
you.
of time.
I promise you, I will.
I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Chance. So, Mr. Dewan, I just have a couple follow-up questions for you. I heard when we were talking about the offenses and what you've learned from the short-term sex offender treatment program, that I heard you talk about the victims and the harm to the victims. Mm-hmm. And I also heard you talk about understanding now that because of their age, regardless of the situation, they did not have the ability to consent.
Correct.
Do you looking back at those three incidents, do you see how you were manipulating them at the time?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Unfortunately for me, as I explained, my problem was that being younger than they were and being older and taller and, you know, maybe stronger, I don't know, but then
Probably.
Yeah, I would assume so, but that's through what I've read and what I've learned, that would most likely be the case. Is through those things, they were probably terrified to say no. Unfortunately for me, that does not make me look any better. But through just that sheer intimidation alone can affect somebody. And unfortunately, that today, thinking on that, at the moment, I wasn't thinking about that, but today, that hurts me. It hurts me. I know it's hurting them, but it hurts me. And through that intimidation, I manipulated them to do what I wanted. And it's sad that I stooped so low in my own morals. I'm not saying trying to degrade them or anything of the sort. I'm just stating for my own self person. I degraded myself and went down so far as to do something like this. And I intimidated people who didn't deserve that at all. They were just happy living their lives. And then I came along.
All right, thank you for that response. My other question for you is, you talked a lot about understanding that you hurt the victims. What do you think, or in your self-study, and I'm sure it was touched upon in the sex offender treatment program, what do you think the long-term harm to the victims in cases like this are?
Okay, long-term harm consists of, from what I've read, nightmares, PTSD, what is considered ghost pain. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, ghost pain. When someone gets close, they may not stop. Or hold on, excuse me. When they try to get into that kind of relationship with somebody, they may think twice. They look at everybody differently. They're afraid that someone else is going to hurt them. They're always looking over their shoulder. They're in fear. They live in fear every single day. And again, I wish I could take it back, but I can't. No matter how much I want it, no matter how much I try, I can't reverse time. That pain, that trauma, PTSD, that even the body, even if the mind doesn't register it, the body alone will remember that. And that alone brings that fear up. And that fear is the long-term thing. Some get over it, some don't. And just, unfortunately, they're living with that every day. And as I stated when I was in court, when they asked me if I had anything left to say, I just hope you guys can find it in your hearts to forgive me. And I apologize, and I wish I could take your pain away, but I can't.
Thank you for that. I did not listen to your prior hearing, so I'm not really sure if we talked about the violation of probation at all. So, and I bring that up because you were only on probation for about 3 months when you committed these offenses. And part of the violations were having a smartphone, being on Facebook, you had pornography on your phone, and then obviously the contact with the minors. So going forward,
Yep.
if you were to be paroled today, you would have almost 3 years of discretionary parole. And then you have 20 years of probation and 10 years on the sex offender registry. It's a lot of eyes on you.
Mhm.
It's a lot of individuals, structuring what you need to be doing.
Right.
Have you thought about that at all and how you'll manage it?
Yes, believe it or not, I'm actually very good with structure. I enjoy structure. It keeps me focused. And that's, again, one of the things I noticed on my self meditation. A schedule keeps me focused. So if I know what I'm doing at any time, that's perfect. If I'm going to work, great. That's all I'm thinking about. If I'm working on my book, cool. That's all, that helps me. If I got to go to sex offender program, if I got to go to tier 2 mental health treatment, whatever the case may be, it's perfect. I enjoy structure, and I have plenty of it with my family, and I'm sure with everything that I'll need to do. And being, yes, eyes on you is kind of scary, but you know what? All those eyes on me will turn and smile when they see that I actually am the changed man that I'm promising you that I am. Through my actions, I will prove.
Okay. All right. So you're a changed person, and I know Ms. Chance had you talk about that a little bit. What do you think the biggest change that you've made is?
Biggest change?
I should say the most significant.
Okay. The most significant change, I actually find that there's 2 things that are the most significant, if I may. And the first one, of course, is realizing, again, what has happened, what I've done, and how I did it. The second is realizing about myself, everything about myself that I kept hidden, that I didn't share, and realizing how that affected not just me, but everybody around me. And, I also realized that the actions that I made were not smart at all. Anybody can tell you that. Even I can, sitting here. I'm the one who knows. It's not smart. It wasn't smart, never was smart.
Well, I think it goes beyond not being smart. They're violent offenses,
Absolutely.
right? There's a level of violence to them. There's long-term harm to the victim, which trickles over into families, communities. So I think it goes beyond not being smart, because I think looking at, you've completed high school, you've done all these programs. I'm not sure that there's a question about your intelligence. I think it's a question more about how your attitude has changed. you know,
Oh.
and your view on what's right and what's wrong.
Okay, I misunderstood the question then. I apologize.
No,
So-
you did a good job with the first part. I just wanted to kind of pick apart this, you're identifying as, you know, it not being smart.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, to add on that, you are correct. It does not just expand to, you know, it's not just about them or me. It does, you're right. It expands out to the families, the community. The community could act in fear when they see me. That's the community's view on it. You know, you don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody will act a different way. However, my attitude towards this is one of guilt and hoping for forgiveness from them and the community and everybody that got harmed. However, I also am hopeful in that aspect that they will forgive me. They will do that, and they will see that I'm trying to fix, you know, myself. And I also know that my views back then were jaded. They were one-sided. You know, my views today are a lot different. I'm more open-minded. I see things for what they are. I look deeper into what is around and how it affects people. So my views are very different from what they were back in the day, in a positive.
What were you, 21 when you committed these offenses? You know,
I was 20, yeah.
20. It's an age of, you know, you're narcissistic, you know, it's all about you, selfish, only, you know, you only see things from your perspective. You know, at the age of 27 that you are now, our hope is that you have matured and that you can see the greater harm of your actions and how they affect others. And my last thing I wanted to follow up on is you are going to live with your grandmother. Do your grandmother and your grandfather, they live together, so you'd actually be living with both of them?
All right, so no, my grandfather lives down the street.
Okay.
The person that lives with her, I consider my grandfather. He's been with her longer than I've been alive.
Okay. Right.
Yes.
Because your last hearing, you were going to live with your grandfather?
Yes, there was a family emergency. One of our aunts had a heart attack. And so she had to go live with him, which took the only room that he had reserved for me.
Okay. But
So-
how do you feel about living with your grandmother? Do you think that's a positive place for you to be?
I do. My grandmother is stern, but she is also very supportive, just like the rest of my family. She will do whatever needs to be done to make sure I succeed in the most positive way. She'll make sure I stay on my feet. I stay positive. If I need to talk to somebody, she's always there.
Okay. And I did appreciate that you were able to identify what you saw as some high-risk situations for you, and how you will address them. You know, staying with your family. I'm not sure what the whole wearing of a body cam was about, but attending substance abuse treatment.
Yes.
You will be, whether you get parole today or not, there's a couple of things that will be happening. You will be attending sex offender treatment in the community.
Yep,
You will be prohibited from having any contact with minors.
correct.
So those things are all, you know, I appreciate you're already looking at to what will cause you to have problems in the community. So that's all good. And getting back to treatment, your mental health treatment, I think is important.
Yep.
And no alcohol.
No alcohol. Now, may I say something on the body camera thing?
Sure.
My grandmother, that was her idea, actually. She brought it up and she said, I know you got to go to work and so on and so forth. She said, when you're out, she said, I would like you to have this. Do you have any objections to it? And I asked her, I'm like, well, why would I need that? She's, I want to know why. What's her thought? And she said, well, not only it's so parole knows what you do at every moment when you walk out of mine and Angelo's vision. So it's for your protection as well as so they know at every moment what's going on. I said, that's perfectly fine. I don't do anything wrong. I don't plan on doing anything wrong at all. So I said, sure. The more
Well,
oh, go ahead.
I know, I appreciate, I think I get a sense of why she's thinking that way, but I can assure you that you guys will probably be seeing a lot of parole and probation for a while. So
Yeah.
there will be some structure, there will be a lot of parameters that you'll need to adhere to. All right, Mr. Duane, I appreciate you answering my questions. I'll see if Ms. Turner has any follow-up questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Dewan, you have 3 standing criminal protective orders against you through the year 2050. Why don't you tell me what you understand that means?
What I understand that means is no contact. I cannot be within a certain, I believe it's a certain distance or anywhere near the vicinity of where they live, their home, them, period. And if I was to, if like say I was in a store, I'm to alert parole or probation immediately and get as far away as possible. So basically I'm not allowed to be anywhere near them and have any contact.
And no contact includes anything through social media?
That includes social media, it includes in person, it includes through a third party, anybody, period. Yep.
But that you have a complete understanding of your obligation, especially because your intent is to return to Torrington, where I assume some of these victims still live.
I don't know where they currently live, but if that
I'm
is the
not
case,
asking you that.
but yes, I am aware of my obligations.
How did you know these victims, since there's such a significant age difference?
All right, well, one of them was a friend of my family's, and another one was a friend that I had met when I was home. 2 of them were his friends. So, and he was at the time 18 years old when I met him. So they were, 2 of them were his friends. One of them is a family friend. That's how I
At
know.
one point when you were talking to my colleague, you used the statement that you, and I'm not sure how many of the victims you were referring to, ended up having sexual relationships with these victims.
I met every single one.
And I want to clarify, because you actually facilitated and, as my colleague pointed out, manipulated the victims so that you could have sexual contact with them. And sexual contact is different than a relationship. And when you use the terms ended up having, that makes it sound like it was spontaneous, that it was mutual. And in fact, you orchestrated the encounters by isolating the victims.
So,
And in fact, I'm not done.
okay.
And in fact, in one case, the victim repeatedly said no, and you ignored that. So there was, to some degree, force used because you overpowered her when she was telling you no. Why is it that you wouldn't respect this person or any other person declining sexual contact with you?
This is one of the things I reflected on hard when I was home, as I previously stated. And Miss, forgive me, I forget your name. The one who spoke before you, I apologize.
That's okay.
It's my colleague. Go ahead.
Yes, your colleague had stated, you know, as a 20-year-old man, I only thought about myself. I didn't think how my actions hurt other people. And in my depression state, that is exactly what happened. And I didn't think about anybody else. When I was there, I was thinking about myself, and I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about myself. I didn't think about anything but myself and my own gratification. And that was a big problem, one that I
Because
addressed.
you didn't just think about yourself, but you actively disregarded them.
Right. That's
And
what I mean.
their safety, their consideration, as part of, I guess, your cognitive distortions, that the sexual contact was not harmful.
Right.
That's something you fed yourself to believe that.
Yes. At that time, that is exactly what I fed myself. And you know
But
what?
when you were talking about the long-term impact, you used the expression that you didn't know what it would be like for the victims to get over it. That's called recovery.
Yeah.
It's called healing from the trauma. And I think one of the things that you left out of that answer that I would suggest to you needs further thought is significant damage to their ability to trust other people, men in particular.
Okay. Yeah. I believe.
I
go
don't
ahead.
need any response to that.
Oh, okay. All right. I apologize.
So, your grandmother, is she aware that you need to be on the sex offender registry and that will involve her address?
She is aware. Yes.
Okay. So when your grandma wants you to use this camera for your protection, does she not believe that you committed these crimes?
She believes 100% that I committed these crimes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's as much for the protection of the community as to ensure your accountability for your movement and actions.
Correct.
So you spoke repeatedly about seeking forgiveness.
Yes.
So you cannot achieve that from the people that you violated and victimized because you are to have no contact with them.
Correct.
And that's, again, through the year 2050. So you need to give some thought, Mr. DeWan, to how you are going to contribute to society and give back in ways that can compensate for the harm that you have committed through your crime. Because it's not going to come to you in a signed note from one of the victims saying that all is forgiven. Do you understand that?
Oh, I understand that completely.
I hope to some degree, Mr. DeWan, you appreciate all the gifts and privilege that you have. You committed a horrific crime against a very young boy, and you served no time for that. And then you were out 2 months before you started making new victims, and you made 3 before you were rearrested. And as my colleague pointed out, violating probation in almost every way, shape, and form, even to the point that you told one of your victims that you weren't supposed to be around minors. And yet you still have a robust support system behind you. You have the privilege of education awaiting you. And, one of the things that stood out for me from the evaluation that the problem sexual behavior treatment provider wrote up was that at the time, this is before your last hearing, you didn't think you needed any additional treatment. So at what point, having completed the short track program already, at what point did you realize you have a lot more work to do on yourself?
It took, I was, excuse me, I was very distraught when I was denied. But again, within a couple days, I sat down and I thought about everything, and I realized, okay, obviously I missed something. There's something that I didn't do right. There's something in my head that I'm still missing. what is it? And that was before I received the board's decision with what they said, what I needed to do. And I realized a few days after having the hearing that I needed to work on myself more and that I needed further help.
Well, and I would encourage you, even though you've contacted Mr. Gates, to really do that work in a group setting. I think it's important for you to discuss your crimes, to hear about those from others, to be held accountable by other group members. I think it's a more robust dynamic than hiding, or avoiding that kind of processing by doing one-on-one therapy. Maybe you'll choose to do both. So am I clear that you recognize alcohol is a problem for you?
You are very clear in that, correct?
Did you come to any understanding through your work with mental health and your participation in Tier 2 that overconsumption of alcohol actually exacerbates the problems of depression?
Yes, that was one of the biggest things I took away from that, among others. Yes.
So if you use alcohol to self-medicate and to avoid and to handle the feelings of depression, you're making the situation far more worse for yourself, because alcohol itself is a depressant.
Correct.
I have no more questions for Mr. Dewan.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. So, Mr. Dewan, we are now going to hear from the Office of Victim Services. You're able to listen, but you are asked to not interrupt.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. DeJesus?
Good morning, board members. I do have a statement and it reads as follows. Good morning. I hope this message finds you well. I am writing to formally submit my victim statement regarding the incident that occurred in 2017. I am reaching out to discuss concerns regarding safety for my family and myself. I still have many concerns with Aziah, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the first name, being released early due to his sister threatening me with him being released early. I still have a lot of trauma from him and his family with the threats. If he gets approved, I'm worried that he might come near me and my family due to the fact that I was the first person to come forward and got him arrested. I can't go anywhere without my husband or my parents being with me due to being afraid of his family, especially his friends. When he first got locked up, I was being threatened by his friends multiple times. His friends live in the same town as me, and when they see me out in public, they try to start drama with me by calling me names and threatening to fight me. I went to Walmart one day with my husband and my daughter, and we seen a group of his friends, and they threatened to smack me just for walking past the aisle they were in. Please take my concerns into consideration before deciding on the course of action. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. DeJesus. And thank you to the victim for submitting the statement. We appreciate her input and taking the time to do that. So, Mr. Dewan, we will now deliberate about your case and give you our answer in just a few moments.
All right.
All right, thank you. Ms. Chance?
So this was a rehear for Mr. Dewan. And he had previously taken the short term. And because he had not demonstrated any changes in behavior and fully accepted the impact to the victims, he was denied and given the rehear to do the Track 1 sex offender program. And it's been 2 years and he did not do that. today he comes before us and says that he admits his guilt, although at the last hearing, he did not realize the harm he caused to the victims, but can only focus on the future and his action of a changed man. Indicated that he had completed multiple programs. For me, the only relevant ones were the short-term program where he demonstrated not enough growth. He took the tier 2 because he said alcohol was an issue for him. And the fact that he chose to contact a private treatment provider, knowing that, you know, that would have been an individual setting versus the evaluation that was done in 22, in which he would have to participate in a group setting, which I thought, my own opinion, that would be more appropriate for him. So he has indicated that since he did not take the track 1, he contemplated on his own as to his behavior and the impact on the victims, and that he feels that his problem was he was going through a depression. He had broken off his relationship with his girlfriend, and the fact that he was not an honest person. He was very truthful. And so he also said that he recognized that victims did not have the ability to give consent, and acknowledged that the victim may have been intimidated by him, and that he was able to manipulate them to do what he wanted them to do. So he also talked about, when he was asked by you, Madam Chair, about the long-term effects on the victim, and he identified those as nightmares, PTSD, living in fear, not trusting of others. He then again apologized to the victim because he felt that during the incidents, he had disregarded their no responses when they tried to say no to him. He acknowledged the violation of probation with having the pornography and the smartphone, but said that he enjoys structure and is aware when you, Madam Chair, told him about the length of time that he would be under supervision. Significant changes, he said, is how the offense behavior has affected or impacted so many people, which he never thought about before, and the long-term effects on the victims, that his attitude has changed despite not completing the long-term program. He's now aware of the long-term victims, their family, the community, and his family and friends. And he's hopeful that the victims will eventually forgive him. So I also listened to the Office of Victim Services today. And for me, Madam Chair, when I read the written decision on the last hearing, I don't understand why Mr. Dwan had 2 years to complete program and was not able to get into it. And that is of concern to me. And I hear the fear from the victim and the negative impact that they're going through in regards to this offender. So Madam Chair, I'm not in favor of further use today.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Chance. So I agree with many of the comments made by Board Member Chance. I think that Mr. Dewan has said many things to show some growth in his thinking process, in offender change. You know, I appreciate the concern about him not getting into the long-term sex offender treatment program. We don't really have an explanation as to why that did not happen, if he just wasn't thought to be appropriate for the program, or I mean, he didn't rise to that level of treatment. He did do the Tier 2 program. We did not get into great detail about it, but it is clear from many of his answers that he recognizes the impact that alcohol has, not only on the offenses, but how it affects his mental health. There are some documented mental health concerns. There is a letter from a conservator indicating they will be monitoring many of the day-to-day necessities for Mr. Dwayne. I think he has a support network in the community. I believe it was clear from his responses to panel member Turner, he understands in detail the protective order and what's required in terms of having no contact whatsoever. I also think that he was able to identify a number of areas of concern that he will need to be aware of in the community. He recognizes that probation will be for 20 years, and if parole, it adds another few years to that. I am confident that he will be participating in sex offender treatment program with a group setting in the community through one of the contracted programs. He's on the sex offender registry for 10 years. So I do think that there's a number of things in place to address risk and safety to the community and safety to the victim. I also think that he does score low for risk to recidivate. He's moderate high on the static 99. There seems to be an indication in the summary of his treatment that there could be some overestimating of that based on his mental health needs. So for me, I am in favor of granting his parole today. I think I think we've seen some change. We've seen some thought today in terms of what was not presented in the last hearing. We don't have any information as to why he didn't do the long-term sex offender treatment program. So I don't want to find fault in that. I do think that him seeking services to what will be available to them to him in the community is a benefit rather than a hindrance. So I do see change, and I would be willing to grant discretion today. Ms. Turner?
So tired. I feel I'm so tired of that. So like
I'm going to oppose early termination, early release for Mr. Dewan. The seriousness of the offenses, the multiple victims, the proximity to his prior crimes, and his absolute disregard of the conditions he was supposed to be abiding by caused me great concern, even though he was young at the time. We very rarely see a moderate to high risk with offenders, and I hear what you're saying, that you believe is mitigating.
Well, it does the summary.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a slight overstatement of his risk. There may be. So I'm not a professional. I'm just going by what the counselor wrote.
So, and out of respect for the victim input.
I think we'd all respect the victim's statement in terms of coming forward and what their concerns are. And reasons for denial?
Nature and circumstance, injury and impact, defense on probation. I assume, Ms. Chance, you want inadequate program participation?
Right.
Nature and circumstance, injury and impact to the victim, inadequate institutional participation, and
Current offense.
on probation. Okay. So in the matter of Aziah D DOC, 411246, there's a motion to deny parole for the following reasons. Nature and circumstance of the current offense, injury and impact to the victim, current offense committed while on probation, inadequate institutional program participation. Anything else? That's it. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Aye. So, Mr. Duane, you were denied parole today by majority decision. We hope that you'll spend the rest of your time working on your certificates, possibly maybe getting into the Voices program and doing any other programs that'll help you once you're released to the community. Best of luck.
Thank you.
This concludes the hearing for Aziah DOC 411246. You'll receive all this in writing, Mr. Duane.
Who else is totally surprised that he got denied? I mean, we're just so accustomed to Connecticut being like, sure, yeah, you know, we want you to have some supervision. We'll grant you took, but thankfully, they didn't in this case. What a clown! The guy gave me just such he's like such a clown. I don't know what other words I'm looking for, but how he's like sitting there trying to say, you know, make these faces and Simone is trying to say everything right. How many times? Well, he's giving his word. I give you my word. I give you my word that I'll hold the job. Oh, I'll wear a body cam. I'll wear a body cam. You'll know where I'm going. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, you know, it was I broke up and I was in these relationships, and it's like, are you kidding? Like, he's so clueless. And also, what's interesting about this, and I was caught off guard watching it. It seems that he had a young male victim before he then had these 3 victims, which is what got him the 10 years. So he was on probation for what he did to a boy, which we don't have any records of. That's why, you know, Sir Richard, it's not even listed in the notes for whatever reason. We don't know why. But then he's out on probation. And he has these 3 counts against, I think, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 15-year-old girl. And I'll go into what it is that he did. He went on full SA. It's not like he, you know, oh, they're hanging out and he got caught. No, that he would drive one of them. He drove somewhere and said, "You're gonna do this to me, or I'm just gonna leave you here in the woods, in the middle of nowhere." And it's just, you know, it never gets old. You listen to him talk about how he's in a relationship with them. Oh, maybe they thought that I was bigger and stronger. And it's like, I can't, I thought like, but he is a serial predator. And what's scary is that the state of Connecticut, even though he made a high risk score on the sex offender, which we never see, but I mean, you know, it probably is simply because he has a male victim and a female victim, which having a male victim on the temporal questionnaire gives you a point, which I don't know why they do that, but yeah, I mean, they are using a 20-year-old algorithm. So what do you expect? And he has multiple victims and he's been arrested multiple times. So he goes up high on the risk score. Let me just read this to you. I can't screen share it because it shows information which I can't show. So I'll just have to read it. It's insane. He has 3 separate victims, 3 separate accounts after his 4 victims, and still, and it blows your mind that he gets a 10-year sentence, but still his full term date, I mean, it is 2027, and he only needs to register for 10 years. But don't worry, he promises he won't do it again, and he'll wear a body cam. So, accused of sexually assaulting 3 teenage girls in 2017, he rejected his plea agreement and will face a jury trial, which is not true. Of course, he didn't. He took the plea deal. He was facing 150 years in prison. Of course, as we know, he took the plea deal. Okay, so he admitted in a videotaped interview with police to having sex with one of the girls, according to one of the 3 arrest warrants prepared by the detective. In a second case, he is accused of threatening to drop a girl off in the middle of nowhere if she failed to comply with his demands. In the third case, police say he used his force to keep the girl from running away. Police said they found evidence of text message in which he told one girl he wanted to get her pregnant. The 3 girls were similar in ages, 13 to 14 years old, according to police, who began unraveling a web of Dewan's connections with these teenagers after interviewing one of them who had filed a complaint with his probation officer. He was arrested in November in 2017. And a serial monster. And this is that while he's out on probation for we don't even know what, for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because he was a juvenile when he did it himself to the younger kid, to the little boy. That could be my only guess why we don't see it. Because Sir Richard pulls info and we just don't see that on his record. And that would be my guess. Even at this second parole hearing, he still said, I called it a sexual relationship I was in with them. So we have here the arrest. So the arrest took place. It's interesting because we see one arrest that took place January 16, 2018. One arrest that took place 5/8/18, and then the other one 5/8/18. But one is for something he did on 10/31/2017, something he did on November 7, 2017, and something he did on May 1st, 2017. And these are only the victims that we know about, of course. His entire hearing was just, again, what was it just me? But there was just something about him. He's like theatrical is added and like overemphasizing and the face gestures. And I'm just so happy that Connecticut denied. I would have just thrown something through the wall. And what can you do? What can you say? We see this just when you think you've seen it all, you see more of this stuff. And of course, there's no DA. And of course, there's no new. But there you have it. And with that, I'll let you go.
And being older and taller and, maybe stronger. I don't know. But then,
Probably.
yeah, I would assume so. But that's through what I've read and what I've learned, that would most likely be the case. Is through those things, they were probably terrified to say no. Unfortunately for me, that does not make me look any better.